welcome to what is the fourth in the series of four meetings that we've had with Jgor for the last 4 Wednesdays. This is the last one, our last meet up with Jgor. Although bear with us because we are working on some other seminars with some other producers in weeks to come. So if you'd keep this 4 o'clock on a Wednesday slot open for us, we'll have some news forthcoming as to who we're having next. But this time Jgor has brought with him, obviously at a social distance, 2 of his colleagues at Banfi. So I'd like to introduce Enrico, who is the general manager of Banfi. Welcome, Enrico, and also Matteo, who is part of the winemaking team. Both Matteo and Enrico have been part of the Banfi team, Banfi story, for the last 20 years, which goes back to the point that Jgor made a couple of weeks ago, that basically once you've joined Banfi, it's the last job you'll ever have. Nobody leaves Banfi.
Hopefully.
They're obviously lovely to work for, so we can cover that. There's just been a comment, Jgor, that has your haircut been done at a social distance?
Yeah, my wife did it, so yeah, it was safe. Peter, don't worry.
She's done a very nice job. You're looking as dapper now as you were for.
Yeah, it looks good. Yeah, thank you. I'm lucky. You know, at the beginning was scared, but yeah, we managed.
I'm getting, my hair's getting crazier by the day. Anyway, so our subject today is the Banfi Brunello story, innovation rooted in tradition. So lots to pack in. We're going to try and pack that in the next sort of 40 or so minutes. And I have a list of questions for all 3 of you. And so first off, Jgor, Brunello di Montalcino, what is it?
Brunello was the name given to the grape that the people from Montalcino was used to cultivate since ever. So is dark in Italian and refers to the color of the skins. They thought it was a grape variety itself, but just only in 79, yeah, the Grapevine Association Board of Siena, they declared that Brunello and Sangiovese were the same. So since that time, luckily they kept the name, but Brunello is the wine made by Sangiovese grapes in Montalcino.
Fantastic, that's lovely and clear. Matteo, I think you're still muted. Rebecca, are you able to unmute Matteo and Enrico for me, please? So Matteo, question for you. What are the rules of Brunello di Montalcino in terms of growing and aging? What is it that you have to adhere to in order to make the Brunello?
Okay, just the basic rules. First of all, it has to be 100% Sangiovese, strictly. Then, the grapes must be grown in Montalcino. It has to be aged at least 2 years in wood in general, so it can be barrels or big casks. It's up to the producer. Then, it can go on the market just after 5 years, which is 6 years for the Riserva. And it has to age at least 4 months in the bottle, 6 months for the Riserva. These are the basic rules.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you. And Enrico, when was Brunello first invented? Who pioneered the wine and what was so revolutionary about it at the time?
Brunello was invented. The Brunello we know now as a recipe was invented by Biondisanti family, predominantly from Tancredi and Clemente and Tancredi Biondisanti, because they were the first in, let's say, the middle of the 19th century to experiment and to study Sangiovese, to vinify Sangiovese strictly as a single varietal, as 100% with a long aging. that was a kind of revolutionary system versus what was used at the time in the whole Chianti area, where Sangiovese was never produced straight as a single varietal, but blended with other varieties, white and red. And second, the aging of the wine. Generally, the red wine were not aged, but predominantly put on the market in the spring or in the late spring after the harvest.
So that's great. So the really revolutionary thing is the fact that it was 100% Sangiovese, not blended, first time that it had really been showcased absolutely on its own.
Yes, and aged in a hood. At the time, the aging was usually done in a big cask for more than 4 years at that time.
Okay, okay. And traditionally, the Brunello wines have been extremely popular in the United States. So is this why the Mariani family, the founders of Banfi, chose to come to Montalcino in 1978? And how were they perceived when they first arrived? How were they received by the people already in Montalcino?
The history of Montalcino is very interesting and too long for a webinar, but Montalcino went through a very depression phase after the Second World War, and predominantly in the 60s, that really arrived to Montalcino be a very limited amount of vineyards cultivated, very, very small, when we talk about the late 60s, beginning of the 70s. Jgor Marini was a person at the time very involved in the import and distribution of Italian wine into the United States, and he was traveling a lot, Italy, not only Italy, but also all of Europe. And he came to Montalcino because he had at the time, let's say a little, let's say we can say rumors in the States of this appellation that was basically not present on the market. There is one very important number we have to know, that in 1967, when the consortium was founded, the total production of Brunello di Montalcino was 65,000 bottles of the total appellation. So you can imagine that with this volume was not so known around the world. John arrived in Montalcino because he heard of this wine, and his original coming to Montalcino was to find out a brand to import in the States. But fortunately or unfortunately, he fell in love with this territory and started this plan to invest in Montalcino. Of course, at the beginning, there was you can imagine something, an American, a North American guy from New York coming to Montalcino, that was at the time a very depressed and sleepy area, with investing and doing an investment that was a little bit out of any scale at the time, and also initially people who loved him and people who hated him. But then the history then demonstrated that the project was one of the most important projects for not only for Montalcino, for the Italian wines. So now we have a lot of friends, more friends than enemies.
So they were a little bit perhaps sort of suspicion at first, but people soon became friendly, I guess. And you're running the winery day to day. So what's it like to be reporting to the Mariani family when they're based in the UK? Does that have its own difficulties, or is it sort of quite smooth?
No, it's been really very, in my opinion, very easy to deal with them independently from the distance. First of all, because now is Cristina Mariani running the family company. Before was more John involved, but they are frequently here in Italy, and they are really independently from a business perspective. Of course, that is business that we have also to manage. They are so let's say, emotional link to this project, to the States and to Italy, that sometimes what I'm saying to them that they are a little bit too much Italian, so they should be a little bit more Americans. But honestly, sometimes I'm a little bit confused because okay, but so the distance has never been an obstacle in our relationship, both from a business and personal point of view.
That's really good. So a question now to Matteo. What has been Banfi's influence on Brunello? I understand there's been a lot of research into the Sangiovese variety and where it's grown in the area. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, of course. I could speak a lot because we work a lot together with the university every year, but I will make just a couple of examples. First of all, we can talk about the clonal selection of Sangiovese. You know that we have been pioneers in clonal selection of Sangiovese. We started this project in the 80s together with the University of Milano. It was very, very important because Sangiovese is a family of different plants. So it was important to different plants with different aptitudes. So we started this project to see what we could find here in Montalcino to get the best. From this project, at first we found 650 different clones just here in Montalcino of Sangiovese. The clones of Sangiovese are very different from each other. You can have clones which are good for wine, for fresh fruity wines, for instance. Clones with big berry size, with high vegetative vigor, which are not interesting at all. And but some clones are good to get a wine with a high aging potential. Okay. If they're planted in the right soil, in the right place, with the right rootstock. Okay. So, out of these 650 clones, following a complex protocol, which is not stated by us or by the university, but by an European law, we got 15 clones, which now are on the market. They are on the market and they can be used by everyone. So we did all this work, but it is a work for everybody. Everybody can plant these clones. Out of these 15 clones, we focused on 3 clones, which we are still using. Of course, the clonal selection of Sangiovese is still work in progress, and it is done also in other parts of Tuscany. And of course, we are still trying other clones selected by the others. Okay.
So you've had to do a lot of research into the clones and also where they're planted as well, as to which perform best around the area.
Yes, it's important, the interaction between the clone, the vineyard, and also the vintage. So there is not a super clone which is always the best. Sorry? Ah, okay. No, the screen changes.
we're just showing, I think Rebecca's just showing
the vineyard.
the pictures of the vineyard so that people can see the aspect. And,
okay, just to make an example, if you take one of these 3 clones which are here and plant it down there along the river, you won't get Brunello at all. You can get a good fresh fruity wine, but not Brunello. Okay. So beside the clonal selection, another example can be the research for the optimal trellising system for our condition. Here it is. This is the so-called Alberello Banfi. You know that the rules for making good grapes are quite simple. You have to get a balance in the plant between, let's say, the engine of the plant and the grapes. I mean that you have to get a balance between the surface of active leaves, which are exposed to the sun, and the amount of grapes that you have on the plant. Okay?
Yeah.
There, you also have to get a balance between the vegetative activity of the plant and the production of the good compounds which has to go in the berry. So the color, the tannin, the sugars. I mean, if your plant is always producing a lot of new leaves, it is not in balance. Okay?
Sure, yeah.
Another important rule is that on the trellising system, the bunches have to be separated, not very close each other. This is to prevent disease. Okay. Another rule is that the vineyard must not grow old too fast, which is a problem in the normal spur cordon that is around. So trying and trying, we go to the Alberello Banfi. You see it in the picture. Maybe you have heard before about Alberello, the classic Alberello, which is very different. The classic Alberello is very small. The bunches are very close to the soil. It is usually done where there is drought, where there is a lot of wind. This kind of Alberello is a kind of Y, you see. And the bunches are at about 90 centimeters from the ground. We are the first to do it in Montalcino, but by now we have a lot of hectares with these trellising systems, and a lot of hectares are just on the road from here to the town of Montalcino. Anyone can see it passing by, and I guess that many other producers are going to copy us soon, I think.
So you've converted, or you are converting your vineyards to this trellising system, and this is something
a part of our vineyards, yes.
Right, right. Thank you, thank you. And so all of these researches, all of these developments that Banfi have been making are being shared across the area, I guess, to overall improve the winemaking and standards. Just a question that's been asked just in the background: the objective of refining down the 650 clones that were originally in the vineyards down to just 15. What was the objective in the refinement of that 650 to the 15, and then ultimately
that's very interesting. Thank you for this question. I told you before that the clonal selection has to follow a protocol which is stated by the European law. As the clones has to go on the market, so the plants are sold, 21. One of the rules is that they have to be virus-free. So viruses are a problem also for the
very common argument in these days.
Yes, it's confession. And there are mainly, at that time, there were 3 viruses known for the plants. it's an interesting question, because many producers say that sometimes a virus can make a better quality. Maybe it can be true, it happens not every year, but when there is a virus, the life of the vineyard is shorter. So it is a problem, and so it is not allowed to sell a clone with a virus.
Well, as we're all learning, viruses aren't necessarily a good thing, are they? So yeah, perhaps we're
Of course, many clones were not interesting at all, because the size of the berry was very big. There was a big production, a big vigor. Okay.
So Sangiovese is a little bit like Pinot Noir in the fact that it's very prone to mutation, to change, and so it has a lot of different clones naturally. So this is just to refine it down to the best ones for winemaking in your particular area.
Yes, I think now on the market there are about 100 clones of Sangiovese. Wow. So there's a lot to experiment.
Matteo, when did you first make a Brunello di Montalcino, and do you find were you nervous making such an iconic wine? Is it a difficult wine to make? If you could describe to us how you make the Brunello, what your approach is in trying to imagine what it will be in 5 years' time.
It is very difficult to make Brunello, but first of all, it is a complex teamwork. Nobody can do such wine all alone. First of all, we are a team of 3 winemakers, and we have to be in strict contact with our vineyard manager, Gianni Savelli. Okay, so the making of Brunello, of course, starts in the vineyard management, and in the harvest. What to harvest first? We have to decide if we want to harvest a vineyard all at once, to go there 3 times. And the Brunello has to stay in the winery, in the cellar, for 5 years. So it's a teamwork. As it is a teamwork, I can share my stress with other people. But anyway, every time we touch Brunello, I am nervous. For instance, today we are preparing the 16 for bottling, and I am a little bit nervous.
Of course. And Igor, how many expressions of Brunello does Banfi produce, and how do they differ from each other?
We produce 4 different kinds of Brunello. So it's all of the time I go to the winery with Matteo or the winemaker team, Brunello. I love to taste them from the bottles and every single sip of the zoning, because we did zoning and zonation, so it's a long story. Anyway, I always dream to have a work like that and tasting Brunello every day. But if you should ask me, would you like to make a Brunello and try to understand now what it will be in 5 years? No. That's out of every logic. So you need a huge expertise, big knowledge, and a lot of experience. So I wouldn't be in Matteo's shoes when that's happening.
Yeah, he made it sound terribly easy.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. The tasting part is funny, but the blending is not that simple. So we produce 4 kinds of different Brunello. The basic one is the Castello Banfi Brunello. I can show you because it's not in the picture. Is our flagship wine. Is the wine we are famous for, and it's in the first in the picture.
It's on the left. It's the one on the left of the screen, I think, showing now.
This is a zoning, is the result of, let's say, more or less 20 and plus different zones of Brunello that we vinify separately, and we pick, vinify, and age separately, and then we blend before the bottling. So it's the real final example of what the Banfi research is. And the style is very typical, a nice balance, very pale color, great acidity, high. Then we do produce the two Poggio Lemura you can see in the screen. So the left one is both Poggio Lemura are coming from a single vineyard, Brunello, surrounding the castle, and they are, as Matteo mentioned, the final result of the clonal research, because both they've been the first Brunello ever done with only 3 clones of Sangiovese. So it's absolutely unique because it's coming from a single vineyard, which is already stunning, and then is made only with those 3 clones of Sangiovese. So the style is, let's say, a little bit more modern, more concentration, beautiful color, with the same, of course, characteristic of tannins and acidity like a Brunello must be. The Poggio Lemura Riserva, the number 3 from the left, is the best of the Poggio Lemura single vineyard, which is aged 1 year more than the basic Brunello by the government to become a Riserva. So it's 6 years aging from the picking. So the last one in commerce will be is 13 nowadays. And the final one on the right-hand side is Poggio Alloro, is our iconic one, is the best Brunello, probably the most famous in our range. And it's a single vineyard once again, but it's not only a single vineyard and a Riserva, but it's made only when the vintage is absolutely amazing. That means not every time. So we made, if I'm not wrong, just 7 times in the last 21 years. So it is representing the highest expression of our single vineyard Poggio Alloro. And the name is also easy to understand. Oro is the gold and Poggio is the hill. So it's our golden hill, the place where the Brunello is coming the best. So these are the 4 we are doing in our portfolio.
And so here's a difficult question to Matteo. Basically, it's like asking which is your favorite child. Which is your favorite of the Banfi Brunello expressions and why?
No, it is not a difficult question. It is Poggio Alloro. It's okay. No, I love the complexity and the elegance. It's strictly a single vineyard. It is an old vineyard which we are maintaining. And in this vineyard, besides the clones, we also have old plants which are out of the standard clonal selection. Maybe it's possible that some plant is not virus-free, maybe, I don't know. But the result is fantastic for me.
Fantastic. And Enrico, same question of the Brunello wines. Which is your favorite?
I've been in the last 20 years. I have seen all the Poggio Lemura project arriving on the market and growing. And this is our, let's say, I consider it our experimental and challenging arena. So today, probably the real best. My perfect wine is not yet is in the cellar, but so far, the Poggio Lemura Riserva 2013, that is because it is a mix of terroir in the Poggio Lemura area, where we have located these vineyards coming from our clonal research, but in the Riserva there is also, in addition to this, our idea of grape selection in order to identify really from the Poggio Lemura out of this vineyard what is really not only the perfect bunch. In this case, we are going to choose really the perfect berry for doing this wine. And the Poggio Lemura has, in any case, a very unique terroir characteristic that is over what is the vinification. The terroir of Poggio Lemura in any case coming out. is coming out in a good way if Matteo and his team are doing the good work. In a bad way if they're doing not the good work.
No pressure then, Matteo. And so the 2015 wines, Brunello's, have just been released, or at least the non-reserva wines are being released. And the Consorzio has given 5 stars to the vintage. So what is this seems like it's good. So
Yes.
Matteo, can you describe a little bit the Consorzio and what this ranking means?
So in 15 we had perfect, let's say, weather conditions with rains in winter and a long hot summer, but never torrid, never too hot. So we had a lot of fruit without jammy fruit. We had a lot of tannins, but without asperities. We had balance, we had elegance, we had aging potential. But if I have to talk about the stars system, from my point of view, it is very, very tricky because it is done in January when the wines are still finishing the malolactic fermentations. The wine are not clean, are still a work in progress. The testing is very difficult. And they have to age for 5 years. So it's very fascinating, but from our point of view, it's a little bit tricky.
Yeah,
Someone is proposing to do a further ranking later on. I don't know if it will happen.
It seems very early to call the vintage when it's only are you saying it's the January after the harvest?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Right. Well, it's no surprise we've ended each week that we've done these Zooms with what Jgor is going to drink this evening. So I guess between the 3 of you, Matteo, Enrico, and Jgor, there's no great surprise as to what I hope you're opening this evening. So is it Brunello on the menu tonight, Jgor?
Of course it is. It must be. While Matteo and Enrico were speaking, I was getting thirsty, and even if it's just 20 to 6 in Italy now, I think it's time for a nice aperitif. And despite the weather condition, which is actually very good, so it's 20 plus degrees and very sunny outside, Brunello is not the wine that you must drink only in the winter time. So as I used to say, it's just a matter of balance. It's a wine that can be for, expert tasters, but also for, let's say, new tasters, because it's just the way of Brunello expresses that counts. So as soon as you understand the balance between tannins, color, and acidity, and of course alcohol, then Brunello will be your lover forever. So it's a wine that can be extremely eclectic. So it's good also as by itself as an aperitif, as I'm doing now. So I'm opening a 15 because it's not just a winter wine, as I said, and I will enjoy tonight with something absolutely simple. So I don't know yet, but with just a little Parmesan cheese and a glass of Brunello, I can say I'm the king of the world. So. And I'm thirsty myself.
Yeah, you're making me thirsty. In fact, I might join you. It's only 20 to 5 here, but I don't have any Brunello in the house, but I do have so Matteo, just a quick question for you then on this 2015 wine. What is your recommendation? Is this still too young to drink? Is Jgor committing some terrible crime here?
No.
Or is it already very approachable?
So Brunello is famous for its potential aging, and every time you open an old bottle, it is so exciting. But we have to say that we sell the wine after more than 5 years. It has been in the bottle for long. For instance, on Monday, we are bottling some 16. So our goal is to give you a wine which has a long potential aging, but is approachable just when it is on the market. This is our goal.
And
So it is not a crime to open 15 now at all.
Thank you, Matteo.
not a crime. Okay, okay. And Enrico, are you going to enjoy some Brunello this evening? And if so, what are you going to serve with it? What's your recommendation for having with your delicious Banfi Brunello?
Of course, I will have a Brunello. And what is funny that I love cooking. And so far, I didn't have much time in the last. In the last 6 weeks, because of something has obliged me to stay at home for lunch and dinner, I have very enjoyed cooking. So tonight, in honor of this Poggio alle Mura Riserva 13, I did a wild boar ragu with Banfi pasta. And then an artichoke frittata. That is my dinner.
I was thirsty now. I'm also...
now we're hungry and thirsty. So thank you.
Of course, there is a good weather in the north. Here is a little bit raining, a little bit cold, so will be nice.
Sounds very comforting. Wild boar ragu sounds like fantastic rainy day food. So everybody, thank you so much for dialing in and for helping us today. Does anyone have any burning questions that they'd like to ask the team? I can always think of additional questions, but please either message, wave your hand if you have your video on to let me know if you have any questions. But whilst I'm waiting for somebody to ask a question, I shall ask another one for Enrico, which is the Montalcino area. When we were talking about planning today, you made a really nice point about the Mariani family were not the only outsiders to come to the area. And I wonder if you remember what you said when we were talking about that, and if you wanted to talk a little about Montalcino areas.
Montalcino is an interesting story as a territory for this point of view, because consider that in the 70s start arriving, and more after the Mariani project, Montalcino attracted producer for many different regions, not only in Italy, and also producer from, in fact, also producer from outside. Now we have producer owners from Belgium, from UK, from Brazil, from Panama, from the US, whenever. And also attracted producer from other regions, as well as also people that have main interest in other business, but they decided to invest in the winemaking in the estate in Montalcino. So the community of Montalcino is probably, as a wine territory, one of the most cosmopolitan, with people really different from all over in the world, not only out of Italy, but also really from all over in the world, and also from different experience of different heritage. This is something that, in my opinion, is very positive, because it's really a cultural, from a cultural standpoint, you can share very different vision, very different opinion. Of course, there are also moments of difficulties. You can imagine the producer assembly of the consortium. So it's like a discotheque sometimes, but at the end, it's a very good opportunity to bring to Montalcino different vision, different cultural experience, also to have a network connected with very different farm markets, that having a producer that has also coming from this market can bring a very real experience and vision of what is the evolution of the different market, the different consumers.
Yeah, yeah, so it adds an extra dimension. So while you've been speaking, Enrico, we've had a few questions come through. So I think we're going to unmute Patrick first, who's still sat in his back garden. So Patrick, do you want to fire away with your question?
Rose, just first of all, if you could maybe give us some indication of the other grape varieties that are well suited to this terroir of Montalcino, would be good to hear about.
The question.
Question either to Matteo or to Enrico. Who would like to answer that one?
Yes, you are talking about red varieties, I guess.
Yeah, why not? Let's stick with red.
Okay, well, I think first of all, Cabernet Sauvignon, maybe. In the past, I would have responded Syrah, but we think that with the climate change, it's not going as in the past. The same for Merlot. Now we are also experimenting something interesting, something other varieties, but you will know later. And now something, we have experimental vineyards, so we are making new tests. But for the world of the whites, we produce a lot of whites. So Pinot Grigio is growing very, very well here. Vermentino is very, very interesting. And also Sauvignon Blanc.
An interesting change for you, Patrick.
Yeah.
So you can't say anything about the grapes that you're experimenting with that maybe show potential?
Sorry, excuse me.
You can't say anything about the grapes that you're experimenting with in the experiment.
Okay, we are making experiments together with the University of Milano and Udine, mostly on varieties which are resistant to disease, so which are more sustainable from the environmental point of view. And also from varieties from Georgia, and also, for instance, on Morellone of Casentino, which is an old variety. But for the moment, these are experiments, just experiments, micro vinifications.
Is that okay, Patrick? Does that answer what you need?
Maybe Enrico. I didn't mention Chardonnay between the whites, of course.
Yeah.
Chardonnay, maybe you know Fontanelle.
I have tried it, yes.
Our flag wine. Yeah. Our white wine, of course.
Let's say that if we make a picture of the total Montalcino territory, in the total Montalcino territory, of course, the 80% of the vineyards is Sangiovese, or Montalcino. For the red varieties, basically, yes, I confirm what Matteo is saying, as it's not only for Banfi, but in general, Merlot and Syrah, that in the 90s was quite popular or interesting to Syrah had a very, in Italy, interest from many Tuscan viticulture now is going a little bit down. Probably is coming more in the Cabernet. There is some Cabernet Franc in little bit, not so spread out, but the preliminary results that are more interesting of what you get from Syrah. Merlot is a very difficult variety for certain climate in the areas, in certain areas of Tuscany, even if we have some excellent Merlot in Tuscany, of course. But in terms of development in different territories, and probably some Petit Verdot. That is another interesting varieties. For what concerns the whites, in many regions, is Vermentino is coming on, not only on the coast, but there are also now planting Vermentino in the hillside with very interesting results in terms of general trends, even if Montalcino is between 80 and 85% Sangiovese, and it will remain on this. So we are talking about a very small portion of other varieties.
Thank you, Enrico. And I think sort of on a similar theme, I think Liz had a question that she'd like to ask. So if we unmute Liz.
Hello. Thank you. Hello, thank you very much for a most interesting discussion so far. My question does somewhat overlap with Patrick's, but I was wondering if there's pressure from growers or from within the consortium to be allowed to include international varieties, particularly Cabernet Sauvignon, into Brunello now.
No. We and most of the producers, we believe that Brunello will remain 100% Sangiovese.
Well, that's
someone thinks that maybe we can change the rules for Rosso di Montalcino, but Brunello will remain Sangiovese 100%.
Great.
I think Enrico thinks the same.
Yes.
That's a good, firm, unequivocal answer. Well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
And final question that we've got come through from Elisa.
Hi.
Best 3 old vintages.
Yes. What about the old vintages?
Who?
How old?
The question is for who? Because you can get 6.
How do you prefer? Even 6 is fine.
So I go first.
Matteo, I wanted to listen Matteo. Or Igor.
Okay, let's listen.
But I start with 1985.
Okay.
Then Enrico, 1999, 2010. Maybe Enrico or Igor have other favorite vintages.
I recently, it was months ago, or let's say 6 months ago, we did a vertical tasting of Poggio all'Oro with the Italian Sommelier Association in Verona, where I live. And my favorite in all, there were, let's say, 12 different kind of Banfi old vintages. And my favorite was 1990, which was performing incredibly well after 30 years and was really fantastic. Then the second one that was not far away from that, but of course much younger, to me was 2010. I was loving a lot. If I should choose one, I would go for that, because 90 unfortunately is not in commerce yet. And if you find it, it costs a fortune. Yeah. Then maybe number 3, because it's me, I don't know, is 99 as well. So 99 was incredibly good, and Poggio all'Oro 99 was absolutely stunning. So a wine that you for sure remembering for freshness, elegance, also for the color, keeping the color quite well. So a nice balance, although the time was passing so fast. So these are my 3 favorites.
So you will suggest in the restaurant for a guest to try to open a bottle 99, definitely.
If you have, yes, definitely.
Yes.
If you still have some 99, yes. Open. Of course, you never know. You can age.
Yeah, exactly.
But I would open now, yes. Especially now in the quarantine. You know, this. My feeling in the beginning was to drink only, let's say, cheap wines. Then, while the time was passing, I say, okay, why do I have to wait and to drink those beautiful wines I have in my cellar?
Okay.
So opening up some very interesting bottles that I thought I deserved after 3-4 weeks at home. So if you have a 99 now, open.
Okay, thank you.
In addition to these vintages, and I agree on one other vintage probably I like very much, stay in the 2000, then of course 85 is a great vintage, and if you have probably I like a little bit, I should not say that, but with more than the 90, the 88 for Poggio all'Oro, unfortunately there is no more bottle available. But another vintage that I like very, very much, that is not so old, is 2006.
Okay.
And I'd like also to maybe agrees with me, but we did a nice experiment last year in Italy. So today should be the last day of in Italy, 2000. But we didn't, of course. So just coming in my mind now. But last year, 1 year ago exactly, in Italy, we did a vertical tasting of the poor vintages. So those were not having some good ratings as the one we mentioned.
It
So,
was only all the vintages with 1 and 2 stars from the consortium.
Oh, wow.
exactly. And they were, maybe you will confirm, they were performing now even better than, you know, the well-rated ones. So that means that probably is, once again, a question of expectation. So the poor vintages were really poor in the ratings, but extremely well after longer time that the good vintages. So 96 or I don't know, 2002. The 2014 that was just in Converse last year is actually fantastic just now. So I can imagine that in 10 years they will perform even better and better. So there's not just a question of ratings, but just, you know, you need to know the wines you drink from the tasting profile.
Yeah. Yeah, very, very interesting. Very interesting. Okay, guys. Well, I think that's it for questions. So it just really remains for me to say thank you three so very much for imparting your wisdom and your time to spend with us this afternoon talking about Brunello. Jgor, thank you so much for the last 4 weeks. I'm sorry we shan't be talking again next week in our usual 4 o'clock slot. But I am able to reveal now that Paul Espitalier, who is the general manager and winemaker at Simone Fèvre in Chablis, part of the Maison Louis Latour portfolio, but he's fully in charge of the Chablis winery Simone Fèvre, and he's been in the job about, I think, a year. Is that right, Rebecca? Yes. So he will be online next week, 4 o'clock, talking about his experience 1 year at Simone Fèvre. So we'll be sending out information about that very shortly after this today. And I think Rebecca's been recording today as well, so this will go up online if you wish to repeat the experience again. So thank you all so much for joining us, and have a great evening. And I'm nearly 5 o'clock, so I'm going to start my glass of wine now as well. Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Salute.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye.
Bye.
Ciao, ciao.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank
Ciao.
you.